All right, high rollers, he's back. The dawn of UFC and MMA sports betting. Haven't spoke to this guy in a while because he's busy taking over the world of financial planning and investment, but he's always welcome on the show. He's been good to us. I like to call him the South African phenom. When he was picking regularly for us, his win rate was absolutely astonishing. He knows his stuff, folks, and he's back now to chat about one of the most unlikely and potentially most lucrative fights ever. Chris DeBeer, welcome back. Thanks for being our high roller today.
Oh, thanks, Derek. It's been a while since I've been on the show, but after an announcement this big, we had to make a plan.
Absolutely. We have to make a plan. 2 years ago, Conor McGregor, a long time ago, he had a plan, but 2 years ago, he jokingly said on the Conan O'Brien show that he'd be willing to fight Floyd Mayweather, and this August, it's happening. The nickname seems poignant now, doesn't it? Mystic Mac, like everything he's done, he's called his shots, and he called this 2 years ago on Conan O'Brien.
No, if you followed the career of Conor McGregor, it really has been quite incredible, some of the things he has predicted, some of the things that he's just made happen. If you look back a couple of years, there's just no chance that the UFC would have let a fight like this happen, I don't think. And McGregor has just been the right guy at the right time. And he's somehow manipulated and just made things happen exactly how he's wanted them to.
Well, back on the Conan O'Brien show, McGregor said, quote, "Who wouldn't like to dance around the ring for $180 million? The numbers on this fight are going to be astonishing. And you said it there a couple of years ago, the UFC would not have allowed this. Why do you think it's happening now?
I think there's a lot of things going on in the background that obviously that fans know about as well. But I think it's a combination of, first of all, I don't think you can discount the UFC sale. Obviously, the WMG group who just bought it, they used a lot of debt to buy the UFC. And the only way they can pay down that debt is by increasing revenue, getting that cash flow going, and start paying that debt down. So there's no doubt that an event like this, which is going to generate them potentially hundreds of millions of dollars, is something that's very lucrative to them from that sort of financial aspect. Then I think you've also just got to consider that the UFC is a bit short of stars at the moment. They don't have the Ronda Rousey anymore. John Jones has been in and out. Anderson Silva's on his way out now. Chael Sonnen has moved on. These guys who've been big draws for the UFC the past couple of years are no longer there. Conor McGregor is the guy. And I think that lack of stars has made them realize that maybe they have to cash in while Conor is still around, because who knows how much longer he's going to fight, especially if he's going to get paid $100 million plus for this fight.
When you talk about the UFC star power, definitely hurting. Look at the champions. Daniel Cormier, not necessarily a fan favorite. Then you've got Tyron Woodley. The last couple of fights, just boring. And now Demetrius Johnson, supposedly ranked pound for pound the best ever. He's refusing to fight TJ Dillashaw. What's going on? No wonder everybody likes Conor McGregor. He just puts it out there and goes and does it.
Yeah, at the moment, if you look at all those names you just mentioned, they do sort of lack a bit of X factor about them. They're not really, any of them are not really big trash talkers. And if they do talk trash, it's not really entertaining. Demetrius Johnson, unbelievable talent, but he doesn't bring in the fans. I don't know whether it's because he's so small or because of his fighting style. But he's one of the guys I love to watch, but he hasn't brought in the mainstream media. If you look at guys like Daniel Cormier, he's got more of that grinding wrestling style. And no matter how hard he tries to get the fans to like him, they just go the John Jones way rather. But Conor McGregor is this guy who goes out there, he talks a ton of trash, he says he's going to knock guys out in 10 seconds, and then he goes and does it. So what's not to like about that?
So the new owners have a $4.2 billion tab. They've got to pay it off. A lot of speculation. This is just a money grab fight. What do you think? These cross-discipline fights should be happening? Do you think it's good for the fight game overall?
That's a tricky question to ask. If you talk to the purists, the boxing purists, the MMA purists, they're going to say that this is an absolute money grab. This is a fight for McGregor and Mayweather and the UFC to get rich. They're preying off the casual fan. And then on the other side of things, you've got, the casual fans, the people who enjoy watching fights, who are clamoring for this fight. Should this type of fight become more prominent in the world of combat sports? I personally don't know. I think this is kind of a one-time sort of event. You've got two megastars in McGregor and Mayweather. People want to see this fight happen, and for that reason, it is going to happen. I don't know if it would work so well if you took another UFC star versus another boxing star. First of all, if you look at the world of boxing at the moment, and even the world of UFC, the casual person would probably struggle to name 5 UFC fighters and boxers put together. So I think this is a case of there being 2 mega names and people wanting to see what happens.
The numbers are going to be huge. I mean, Manny Pacquiao versus Floyd Mayweather was a top fight. A lot of people felt ripped off. What do you think the cost of the pay-per-view is going to be? And do you think this is going to be the biggest fight in history?
I think I read that the pay-per-view is going to cost about $100 or in that range. Will it be the biggest fight in history? Possibly. It's definitely going to be one of the top 2 or 3, I'd say. And with McGregor's draw power, especially in the overseas markets, which are markets that Floyd hasn't really ever got massive in, I think this fight could break the Manny Pacquiao Floyd Mayweather record, and it could be a very, very lucrative payday for all parties involved.
We see that Dana White has come out assuring fans that Conor McGregor will indeed fight in the UFC again. He's going to be a new father. He's going to have so much money after this Mayweather fight. What do you think? Does he get back into the octagon? I mean, is there any point?
That's a very good question. I think it could depend on how the fight goes. If he goes out there and he knocks out Floyd in the first few minutes or the first few rounds, and he just shoots to mega stardom, he probably makes $200 million, becomes the biggest star in the world. I think it would be tough to get him back into the UFC. What really is there for him that could possibly top a moment like that? On the other hand, if he goes out there and Floyd embarrasses him, then I think we'll see him return to the octagon quite quickly and reclaim his dominance or reclaim his star power.
Now, what about the effect on the rest of the UFC roster? I mean, certain guys, you look at Tony Ferguson, he does a lot of trash talking. Nate Diaz has been doing it for years, but some of these guys have got to be looking at the Conor McGregor game plan, the blueprint for success, and saying, hey, man, look what he's done. I got to get on this trajectory. I've got to do the same things. You think a lot of these other UFC fighters are going to be jumping ship trying to make money fights for themselves?
I think it depends on the UFC fighter. There are guys who have shown an interest in trying to be bigger personalities than they are. Guys like the Diaz brothers are prime examples. But then you have on the other side of the spectrum, we've already mentioned Mighty Mouse. He seems content in his place. So I think it depends on the fighter. Obviously, there are guys now starting to see the type of value they can bring. And if you bring in the eyeballs and you bringing in the people, then fighters are starting to realize that they do have some leverage with the UFC, which I think was something they didn't really have in the past. If you look back a few years before Conor McGregor and Ronda Rousey type fighters, most guys seem to just be settling for the payday, UFC was the only option. And while there were guys who made a bit of noise, they normally got snuffed out quite quickly. So it's an interesting time in the world of mixed martial arts.
Now, I know you're probably going to be betting on this fight. I know that you like to wait until the weigh-in so you can take a look at the fighters. How do you break down this fight right now? I mean, Conor is the bigger guy. Floyd Mayweather has that impressive record, probably the best defensive boxer in the history of boxing. The guy just never gets hit. But what should happen if he does get hit? Mayweather's 40? Conor's younger, taller, stronger. What do you think is going to happen here?
This is one of the things that makes this fight interesting. On paper, this should be a walkover. If you said there was any other fight where a boxer who's 49-0, arguably one of the greatest of all time, is going up against a guy who's never fought a professional boxing round, you would think it's a joke. But here we've got Conor McGregor, UFC world champion in 2 weight divisions, going in against Floyd. Now, if he goes in there and he tries to get schooled, it's not going to be pretty. There's just no chance, no matter how much MMA training he's done, how much stand-up he's done in MMA, that he's going to be able to outbox Floyd. The distancing is different, the movement is different, the defensive skills are different, the glove size is different. So that's just not going to happen. If Conor goes in there and he can somehow rough Floyd up, get in there early, get up close, and just make it more of a fight than a boxing match, then I think things could get interesting. And there's always that question of, what if Conor McGregor lands with that left hand? Because he's got an absolute bazooka there. And at 28, Floyd's at 40. He's never really been hit. If he does get hit, that's when things are going to get interesting.
Well, I was watching some old Conor McGregor fights where he unloads that left hand. You talk about it being a bazooka. I also noticed that it's lightning quick, too. Everyone's talking about Floyd's quickness, but Conor, it's in a blink of an eye. You don't even see it coming.
That's actually a great point. And you think about it, we haven't seen Floyd in a while now. He is getting up there in age. It's just natural that his reflexes will start to slow down a bit. And you never know. Conor McGregor has got very quick hands and he hits very hard. So if Floyd is just that tiny millisecond out of what he used to be, and he does actually get hit for once, that's when things will get interesting, as I said earlier, and that's when we could have a real fight on our hands. I think if Conor wants to win this, he's going to have to knock Floyd out early. The longer the fight goes on, the more Floyd will be able to just control it and just be the ring general that he is. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Let's say Conor does land and knock out Floyd and shock the boxing world. Does that change the fight game forever? I mean, does the UFC catapult to the top?
I think that absolutely changes the fight game forever. I don't know if the UFC necessarily goes to the top, but Conor McGregor certainly does. And if he does knock out Floyd Mayweather, the sky is the limit on what he can do next. He could literally do a rematch with Floyd. He could go back to the UFC. He could probably start his own promotion, star in movies. There's actually nothing that would be off limits to him.
Now, let's say it does get into the later rounds. I've always wondered about this. You know, Conor McGregor is used to a street fight in the octagon, do anything to win. If he's getting outclassed and getting tired and in some troublesome spots, what happens if he breaks out an elbow or a knee? It's got to be in the contract, right?
That is an interesting question, and I think I did read that if Conor kicked him, then he was liable for a lawsuit. I haven't read the contract or heard many details, but I did hear that was one of the terms there. But you never know. There are some of those masters of the dirty boxing where a couple stray elbows get thrown in intentionally on purpose, and then on the claiming it's accident or something like that. But I don't know if Conor McGregor is enough of a master to be able to hide a dirty trick like that, but you never know what happens later in the fight when the fighter gets desperate.
I mean, if Conor wins this fight, as you mentioned, he's right at the top, talked about as one of the best ever. Is it all Lee-like status?
It could be even bigger than that. To go from being so successful in the UFC to boxing and knocking out Floyd Mayweather, it's definitely up there in the Ali type status. It's up there, not necessarily from a boxing point of view, but just from a fighting and a star point of view. I think it puts him right up there with the biggest in sporting history, not just combat sports history.
Well, the fight is set for August 26th in Las Vegas, just a few months away. It's going to be so exciting. The lead up to the fight is going to be fascinating with all the trash talk. They're both talkers. Right now, I know it's too early for you to be placing bets, but where do you see the odds at, and what do you think of the odds at this point?
You know, the odds have started out quite interesting. Floyd was obviously the big favorite. Conor McGregor, I believe, was about 8-9 to 1. That number has come down quite a lot since this fight was officially announced. Lots of the recreational and casual bettors are betting on McGregor at those odds, and you can't really blame them. You're seeing more of the professional syndicate type bettors. I've heard of a few bets in the $50,000 to $100,000 range being placed on Floyd. So at the moment, those odds are coming down. I've seen Floyd as low as about minus 500 at some places. And if that line continues to come down, if I can get it anywhere in the minus 300 type range, then I'll be ready to bet the house on Floyd.
Wow, betting the house on Floyd. I gotta say this. I just hope Conor wins this fight. I just think it would be so fascinating.
No, I would love Conor to win. As you know, I've been a fan of his from the beginning. Before he was even a big star in the UFC, I was talking about this guy. So I would absolutely love to see him shoot all the way to the top. But unfortunately, in a boxing ring, I don't see it happening. If this was MMA, Floyd probably wouldn't last 10 seconds. In a boxing ring, I think it does make it slightly more even, if you can call it that. But I do think that Floyd wins this quite easily unless Conor manages to catch him.
Well, that's what everybody's going to be watching. Everyone thinks Floyd's going to win, but they'll be watching just in case Conor catches him, man. Hey, you're a fan of the fight game. I got to ask you about Floyd Mayweather's legacy. One of the best ever, never gets hit, 49-0. If he wins this fight to go to 50-0, is it an asterisk beside it with respect to the Rocky Marciano legacy? Because he's fighting a UFC guy and not a boxer?
You know, there's always the talk around Floyd Mayweather and his career. He's been a brilliant businessman. the best businessman boxer of all time for sure. Is he the best boxer of all time? I personally don't think so. If you look at how he's timed his fights, he's done it from a business perspective. It's been brilliant, but he's never really took on guys in the prime of their careers. He waited until Pacquiao was fading before he fought Pacquiao. He fought Canelo early on, just to name a few examples. So Mayweather has been great at getting his opponents either when they were still quite young and early in their career or when they were later in their career. He's had a history of ducking guys. He didn't want to fight Triple G, for example. And while he's been great for the sport from a mainstream media type point of view, he hasn't been one of those old school type boxers like a Marciano or like a Hagler or a Hearns or a Sugar Ray. And I think those are the guys that the true boxing fans really enjoy at the end of the day.
I'll tell you what, it's going to be interesting to see if Floyd Mayweather, Money Mayweather, he's a big gambler, if he places any bets on himself, if he's that confident. Listen, man, enjoy the fights, break it down, bet responsibly. I don't want you to bet the house, but I want you to win a lot on this fight. The dawn of UFC and MMA sports betting, the South African phenom, my buddy, Chris De Beer. Thanks so much for your time, bud.
Thanks for having me back on the show.